Hello, my name is Donna Aufdenberg. I'm a field specialist in horticulture from the University of Missouri Extension. Today, I want to talk to you about planting for cut flowers. One thing that I always really like to emphasize anytime we start talking about growing cut flowers is that we have to plan first. Meaning that you have to do your homework and record those notes, write down all the details that you can gather about all the species that you want to grow. And so I always try to keep a notebook or a journal, a binder to keep all this information in. And regardless of whether you're doing this as a hobby or a business, you really need to keep all this information together. And it's also wise to develop goals and expectations. What do you want to do with those flowers? And where do you want to market them, and so on and so forth. And the other thing is to surround yourself with resources. And that's where also writing down where you find this information is really helpful. So then when you get months down the line and you start having questions, you know where to find those resources. I always try to encourage people to have a top 10 list of what flowers do I want to grow. And when you're developing this list, you want to think about, well, what would your customers want? The other thing is, do you have a favorite? Because if you find out you can't sell them, you still want to be able to enjoy them. And you might even start thinking about which ones are easier to grow, which ones are easier to harvest, and whether you have to net them or cage them. And I can tell you that the netting is expensive right now. So you might steer clear of any that get floppy and need to be held up with support. Think about your location. So where is a good place that you can grow these flowers? Do you want it out of the way, or do you want it something visible so people ask questions and maybe want to come pick your flowers? Think about a level site, one with good drainage, and most definitely at least 6 to 8 hours of sun per day, because all these flowers need full sun. And don't forget to take that soil test, because that soil test will help you figure out what nutrients those flowers need and how you need to amend the soil. In planning, think about timing. This goes back to, once again, I'm going to say it again, do your homework. And so in writing these things down, try to figure out when your dates will be for your last frost, your first frost. Think about seeding dates and think about them in relation to transplanting dates. Because if you're starting seeds indoors, those transplants may take 6 weeks or they may take 12 weeks. And so keep that in mind, that you need to have an idea of how long that seed's going to be in a small container versus planting out in the garden. And think about how soon you would be harvesting those flowers. Think about how you would be planting them. So not everything is going to be planted as a transplant. Some things will be direct seeded. And so that is always good to note. I always had a list of which ones I was going to direct seed, which ones I was going to transplant. And think about this also, the reality of your situation. Do you have time and energy to start those seeds, to have the transplants, or do you need to buy the transplants? I have started buying some things in plugs, and mainly because I just don't have the time or the energy. And it's easier to be able to go ahead with a plug in the ground or in a pot to grow a little while than it is sometimes to start the seeds. You have lots of options when we talk about flowers. You have to think when you're wanting to cut and grow and sell flowers, you don't just want spring flowers. You want to be able to expand your options of selling and times for selling. So you want a variety of flowers that will bloom in the spring, some will bloom in the summer, and some will bloom throughout fall. So you really want to focus on expanding that bloom time based on what you're planting, as well as selecting varieties that have a long bloom time. Also, make sure that you're picking a variety of sizes, shapes, and colors. That way you can have a good combination of bouquets and what you offer, even as single stems and clusters of stems. And also, don't forget your perennials, because your perennials can really be your backbone, because some of them can be blooming from anywhere between 4 to 6 weeks and can really add a lot to your operation. On sourcing plant materials, just always remember to buy good quality plants, good quality seeds. And if you're starting your own seeds, make sure that the seeds that you pick out are this year's seeds and that they're fresh and they have good germination rates. You can get these seeds and plants from a lot of different places, locally as well as online. But the big thing I want to emphasize is quality plants, quality seeds, and make sure you're getting a good product. You want to start off good from the very beginning. And there are a lot of people that grow their transplants themselves. I do a lot of it, but then I also buy a lot of my transplants. So you can mix and match when you're trying to source your plant materials. And think about, while you're doing this planning, think about what you're going to need to plant. So this is the time to be getting your soil prepped. You want to get that soil test. You want to amend that soil. You want to get the weed barrier to put down. I'm a big believer when we're dealing with cut flowers, you want weed barrier. You don't want to have to fight those weeds all the time. And you want clean flowers. You don't want soil splashing up all the time. The other thing is, gather your tools and examine them, make sure they're still in good shape. And it's prime time to start buying that stuff if they're not. And of course, gather your plant materials because you want to be ready and get going as soon as it warms up and you can start planting. And you want to also, like I was talking about earlier, is collect those resources, keep them at hand. There are just lots of information out there. Your local horticulture extension specialist is a great resource. If you don't know something, reach out. If you need information, you can't find it, reach out. We're here to help you. And take a look at our university websites, not just Missouri's, but other states too that are well known for their cut flowers. And so a couple of websites I use are North Carolina State. I also use Johnny's Selected Seed because they have lots of nice charts. They have grower references that are just awesome. If you don't buy anything from them, don't worry about it. But their resources there and they're great. And here's a couple of books that I really like. They are expensive books, but you only buy them once and they'll stay nice on your shelf and ready for you to flip through and use. And so definitely take a look at those. They can be found on Amazon and some of the other bookstores. And so that's all I have for you at this point. The next session that we're going to talk about is seed starting and how to get going on that. So thank you and happy gardening.